Hi, everybody. AJ Park here. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I have the really amazing opportunity to interview Tahani Nelson. I heard that she did all of her interviews in Armor, so I was super excited to ask her about that. So, welcome. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. So, you, of course, with the Armor, you've got to be a fantasy writer, of course. So you've got a
Absolutely.
couple of books out, right? Do you tell us a little bit more about your work that you have out and available right now?
So I currently have two full-length novels and two short stories, all within the Fire Chronicles universe. It's a female-led military fantasy series. So if you like women wearing armor that actually covers all of their vital organs and
I
leading
love it.
armies, I know that's also one of the reasons I wear armor to all of my events. One, because it's really easy to find your people if you make yourself very obvious. Doesn't matter where
Uh-huh.
I go. I'm wearing armor and someone's like, hey, I like your armor. I'm like, let's talk about that. So it's a good marketing tool, but it's also because I like to normalize the idea that armor can be functional for all genders.
I
So
love it.
I
And I
love it.
have to say, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine where you see fantasy art where the ladies are dressed up with armor and whatever, but everything's about this big and there's like a ton of skin showing. And I sent my daughter a message. She sent me this piece of artwork, and I'm like, if I were battling that monster, I'd want to be wearing a little bit more. So
Yeah,
I think that you are a breath of reality to anybody who might actually imagine fighting, because you're not doing it to dress sexy. You're doing it to be strong and to be powerful and to be able to do your job. Is that kind of how
absolutely.
you see it in your books?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there's nothing more empowering than the idea of following a story about a strong, amazing woman leading armies and doing everything she needs to in order to save her people and save herself. I'm oh my gosh, I was so over the damsel in distress and like love triangle thing by the time I was 13 or 14. I was done with it. And that's what so many leading ladies end up doing in all genres, but fantasy especially. They have not been particularly kind to women in history. And so it started by just me writing all the characters I wanted to see when I was young.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I put them out into the world, it turns out I was not the only person looking for that. So I'm really just so excited for how many people have written me or sent letters or DM'd me and been like, this is what I wanted for my daughters. And I'm like, if I had daughters, this is what I want for them too.
Right. And I do have daughters, and I'd love them to read characters in books that would be great role models rather than just saying, oh, someone save me. Someone, please save me. I mean, we want a girl that will take action on her own. And so I love that that's the focus of your story. And I think that's great. Um, how long have you been writing?
I think I've been writing my entire life. I've been
Yeah,
writing
forever.
well for about 5 years, but I've been writing forever. My mother has a bookshelf that has everything I've ever published on it, and on one side of it is like my first book in the second grade,
I
where
love it.
I handmade it, and so I've always liked writing, but I've really got into it about 5 years ago.
That's awesome. So you've done a lot of work since then, for sure. And have you got a lot more projects on the way?
Currently, I have the last book in the Fire Chronicles trilogy, Fire Ascended. I'm working on it right now. I'm about 50,000 words into it. It's
Uh-huh.
going slow, but so many different things culminate in this last book. And while each book can be read separately or on their own, you can read them in any order, I wanted to tie everything together in the last book. And so there's a lot going on there, but I'm really excited about it.
I love that. And we were talking about that before because I've said this many times in fantasy, I have a real gift for picking up a book that's, out of order in the series. And then I can never find the first one, first. So I love that you write books that can be read in any order, because it just allows people to, hey, if they find it, they can just pick it up and read it. And I think that's great.
And they do have a chronological order, obviously. Like the first book happens, and then the second book happens about 200 years after the first book. But because
Hmm.
there's such a large gap, and because history is written by whoever's in power at the time, the books really stand on their own as well. And so you can see like the differences in how the society has been lied to in book two and how the war from book one has affected this entire ripple process, but you can still read them in either order. And that was a lot of fun to try to put together.
That's great. That's a concept I really enjoy. So I know everybody watching wants to see your armor. So we can, are you, can you, I wish we had more,
Right.
a better
I
way
can,
than Zoom to do this, but we wanted to be able to communicate over large distances because you're up in Montana, out in the backwoods.
oh, Kitty,
Oh,
hi.
and there's your cat.
There's a cat. Sorry.
Welcome,
Yeah.
cat.
And you can always see full pictures of my entire set of armors on TahaniNelson.com, but I can show you at
Okay,
least part of it. So we've got the front here, which is made out of leather. Everything has straps. It's handmade wood
that's
or
so
leather.
cool.
And then my pauldrons have some designs on them. My bracers have unicorns.
Those are
And you
so
can't,
cool. The artistry that went into making that is really fascinating.
oh, thank you so much. And then you can't see down here, I can't quite show you, but there are dragons on the bottom half of it.
We'll have to
And then,
see the whole outfit when we look at
and
this.
then my Valkyrie helm has a dragon on it as well on the side there.
Nice. We're fantasy readers and writers, so we love leather armor, and I think that's so cool. And I really, again, I love that you made it functional, and that it looks like if you really had to fight the bad guys, you look like you're dressed for it, you're prepared, and I think that's awesome.
And it's, again, I go to I go to every event in armor. It doesn't matter if it's reading. There's an annual event, or there was before COVID here in Montana, where it's for Christmas, and everybody that writes in Montana can go and they set up a booth, and people can go shopping for Christmas presents and whatnot. And everybody else wears really, really nice Christmassy clothing,
They're
and they
wearing the
look all
Christmas
beautiful. And I
sweaters.
walk in and I'm like in my armor and I just don't even care. And everyone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, you're going to remember you saw me today. And they do. Every year I have at least one person come to my booth and be like, oh, you're here again. I wouldn't
I
have
can
not
tell you
recognized
really
you.
like to make an entrance, and that's awesome.
And that's the biggest thing. Like, even if you don't read my books, even if you don't come and see me at my booth at any event the first time, you're going to remember you saw me today. And that's really important to me.
That's awesome. I love it. Love it. Love it. So, what other fun things do you do besides writing? What are some of your other passions in life?
I do play a lot of video games, which is one of the things about the female armor that I hate, because video games, it's particularly bad because it's all pixelated. You can make whatever you want. But I also, my husband and I like to do axe throwing. We do have actual swords that we use and we practice with, so that I have some idea of what I'm doing when I write about something, because that's another pet peeve, is when you read a fantasy battle scene and you're like, this person has never used a weapon in their life. This is terrible.
I
So I
guess
like to
most of
have,
us, I mean, sword fighting isn't, what everyone does on the weekends anymore, but I think that, interacting with the antique weapons and the stuff like that, I think that's a really cool way to really get in touch with writing a battle scene.
oh, absolutely. I just love it. And having some real world knowledge of what you're writing about, really it helps you to immerse yourself in the story, and therefore it helps your readers to immerse themselves in the story, I think.
Hmm.
So it's a lot of fun. And also it just gives me, like, I could do this without owning armor. I obviously just really like it enough that I wanted an excuse, and now I look for an excuse all the time to wear armor. Like, I don't need to wear armor on a Zoom meeting. You guys can't see me, but you're gonna remember you saw me, and it gave me an excuse to put it on today, and that's really all I look for.
I love it.
So
I love it. So, what would be the core message that you want people to receive as they read your books? Is there some underlying theme that you're going for in those books?
the original main theme was empowerment, that you are capable and worthy of being the hero in your own story. And you don't need anyone to save you. And no matter who you are capable of changing the entire tides of history, to change the eternal tapestry. And it's impossible, I think, to write in any genre, but I particularly have difficulty in fantasy, of writing something without real world politics making their way into the story. So there's a lot of uh, modern politics in there as well, of uprisings, of revolutions, of unfair truths or untrue stories being spread to the masses, and then a lot of
Mhm.
like distrust in the government, because in the books anyway, the government is not great for a lot of it. And that's, we need empowered stories in order to create empowered people. And so that was one of the things that I never intentionally put into the story, but it ended up happening anyway, and it's made a huge difference. I also, um, I don't know, every character has something about them that I'll get a letter and somebody's like, you know, that's what I was looking for. I just wanted to be able to put it in words. So I'm glad I've been able to do that for people.
That's awesome. And I think the fact that you kind of have some of those undertones that merge in with what's going on, in our modern times, I think that's wonderful because it gives you an opportunity to be really relevant to the readers. And even if it's subtle, um, I think that literature really helps us to interpret the world around us. And I think it helps us to, it's one of the ways that we, understand our world and communicate. So I think the fact that you put those undertones in the story is really a good thing. And that people can kind of take more out of it than just, oh, that was a really fun story.
And I think that's important. I mean, I love telling stories, but I also, when I decided to actually publish things, I wanted to put something into the world that was worthy of being there.
Mhm.
And it's been a hard journey, but it's been a good journey. And I've learned a lot about myself in writing too. And I know that at least some of my readers have learned something about themselves. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was empower other people.
That's awesome. If you can write something that will make people, as they read it, re-examine themselves and their view of the world, that means you're a great writer. So I think that's amazing. And I can't wait to read your stuff. We're all gonna we're all gonna have uh, to get these books and read them. So tell us before we wrap up. So what's the best way to find your work?
The easiest way is probably to go to tahaninelson.com, TAHANI Nelson.com. I'm also available on Amazon. If you type in Faii, FAOII, anywhere, everything that shows up is going to be me. That's one of the
Nice.
perks of creating your own language.
I love it.
If you like languages, there's more about the language and its roots and how the conjugations work on tahaninelson.com. If you don't like languages, there's only 6 words in the book, so you don't have to worry that hard about it. So
So you really went the extra mile if you created an entire language and only used 6 words of it in the book.
oh my gosh, I know. I love languages and there was no reason for me to do that, but I did write an entire language and I figured out how, because English is a cool, interesting language, but it's very patriarchal in a lot of places. And I wrote a matriarchal society, so I wanted a language where if you said the word warrior, in English, you tend to think of men first and females second, and I wanted one where you think of women first. So Fai just means warrior, Fa means war, and Yi is the female conjugation. It just means war woman. But because
Mhm.
all warriors are women, it just means warrior. And I loved it. So if you like things like that, go to TahaniNelson.com and you
So
can learn more. I get
you took a
excited.
page out of Tolkien's book and decided to just develop the whole linguistic history and everything. So that's awesome. I love it. I can't wait to look at it more. That's really cool.
You can also find me at facebook.com/thelastfight.
Okay. All right. Is there anything else you want as far as how can people contact you? I think we got covered most of it. You're on Amazon and everywhere. And
Yep. If you type in Fai anywhere, anything that shows up is going to be me. So you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All of my links are on TahaniNelson.com, and all of them are on my Facebook profile and my Amazon profile. So if you can find me on one of those 3 places, I'll find you.
that's awesome. Well, we're all really excited to read your work now, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to all of us and to tell us, more about yourself. And I'm really impressed with some of the unique things that you do that just kind of go the extra mile. So good job.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me.
It's been wonderful to meet you, and we'll talk to you more later. I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more from you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Have a good day, everyone.